at the end. So you called it a career switch. I like to think about it as developing a new career, one that has a lot of different dimensions to it.
Well, you're obviously addressing some really important issues.
And that's kind of what has pulled me forward all along. You know, you come out of college and you've got some fundamentals and some skills and some sort of, I don't want to say myopic, but just sort of your view of what the career paths are. And you say, where might I be of use? Where might I find myself impassioned to do something that could be useful, that somebody might pay me for, frankly? Where might I get excited to get up every morning and go to work? And, you know, at that time, finance was really interesting to me. I had 3 majors at Principia College because I couldn't decide, because every time I took a class, it interested me. And so I added that career path, or that course load as a major. And so you pick something that you think, I'll be interested and I will love this, and I will love to get up every morning and put on clothes and go to work and find something to do in that career path. And finance did it for a while. And then when it kind of began to, I wasn't sure what to do next, I looked at law and went to law school and had a career in law, or a few years, I should say, before I realized that the things I was doing and thinking about, sort of the skills I was employing, were of interest to me and were active for me and were beneficial for my employers, and they were happy with me in the role that I was performing there. But I was kind of on the subway to work every morning reading The Economist, and then I was going up and working on prospectuses for utility companies. And there was a disconnect between what I really wanted to contribute to and what I wanted to, what I was really impassioned about. So I made a shift, and I realize I'm off your slides. So now we need to get back to the slides, but that's kind of.
No, I think that's terrific. That's exactly the kind of thing. Yeah, that's exactly what we're talking about. I mean, that's where we are right now, right?
And that's why I will probably be your least conventional, or at least for now, your least conventional attendee. I haven't had a very linear career path, but it's because I have tried to kind of combine what I'm good at with what I'm interested in at any given turn. And that has consistently sort of bounced me across lily pads, if you want to call them that. And they've always been wonderful ones. I look at my resume and I can't think of any experience that I would have done differently or skipped or that I regret. So, and if you do have little elements of those that you kind of think, okay, that was maybe a little bit of a misturn or a little bit of lost time, if you look at it carefully, you will almost inevitably decide that it was a learning experience, that there was something there that you made a slight wrong turn, like when you're driving off of your phone's instructions, like when Google Maps is telling you where to go, and you make a left where they said a right, or you thought the street before what they meant, and you quickly realize it and you turn back and you've got a much better understanding of the map and of your directions at that point. And so we can go wherever you want in your slides at this point.
Well, no, I love this scripture that you kind of picked out here. And I wonder, how has that influenced your thinking today?
Yeah, it's funny because when you sent the 3 questions through, I looked at the first one and I thought, oh, gee, I am not sure whether he means now in the current, whatever you want to call it, situation, crisis, upheaval, or whether he means in my personal career experience, which has recently had a relatively big sort of transition, you know, from something I knew to something that I definitely don't know. And I thought, okay, well, I'll put that question aside and I'll go to the second question. And I thought the same thing on the second question. And then I got to the third question, it was the same. And I thought, I don't know if he wants me to do my own personal crisis 4 years ago or the current world crisis, which is not a crisis for me, but there's similarities. When there's upheaval, how do you confront it? And so about 4 years ago, I had my dream job at the CIA, and I was really, it was what I had spent a long time sort of developing the skills for. They all came together there. I was really, really, really happy with that job. I was so fulfilled. But there came a moment where, from a personal standpoint, from our family standpoint, we needed to be elsewhere. And so my husband and I both decided it was time to go back to his family's home in New Orleans. And New Orleans is an interesting job market. It's not a vibrant one for other than a few industries that we are not in. And all of my industries, it's not vibrant. It has Napoleonic code, so I can't even be a lawyer here because I'm not French or didn't train in French law. The major banks are not here. Oil and gas is here, but only from operations, not from a business standpoint. It's really sort of hospitality, medical, and corrupt politics are the business in this town. So we both looked at each other and said, well, what do we do now? We're moving home because we need to, from a personal standpoint, from a family standpoint, it's the right thing. What will we do? And we came down not knowing, really. And we both looked at each other and said, whatever it is, it will be worthwhile. It will be of worth. And that was when I started to look differently at the concept of money and value and worth. You go through your career and it's not incorrect to kind of make sure that you're meeting benchmarks for your professional experience, and it's not incorrect to budget, to make sure that where you're trying to live and the things you're trying to do and the skills you're trying to acquire and whatnot, that you have the means to do so, but it can become a driving force. The dollar sign of what some kind of study tells you is what you need can become a bit defining to you. And so we said, you know what, we're done doing that. We'll buy a house that's commensurate with our sort of where we're at right now, and then we'll figure out what is of worth to do. And we've both managed to kind of come into work from home for companies that are elsewhere, or for endeavors that are elsewhere that have been enormously fulfilling. Not necessarily stable, not necessarily guaranteed, but enormously fulfilling. And so it totally met what we said we intended to do, which was to find our worth in the good that we could provide, in finding something that we thought was worthwhile and contributing to it. So I look back on all my experiences and think to myself, I hope that's what I was doing, but I certainly would advise anybody to think about every step in their career path that way. What are you adding value to, and is it of value? And if it is, and you're adding value, then the rest will follow.
I love that. I think that's really, really good. In particular today, when you have over 30 million people that are unemployed, not sure where that number's going, but it continues to go up every time they report. The Wall Street Journal this morning came out with an article that said the U.S. manufacturing has contracted at the sharpest rate since the recession. So there's all this work, all this news that kind of keeps coming out. And I think about what your background is, and how are you staying motivated and facing these things when you're looking at your resume and your experiences, and what stands out to you?
Yeah, it's funny because I watched the version of this 2 weeks ago with Alan Zwick, the captain for Southwest, and I thought to myself when I read his bio in advance of this event, I thought, gosh, I envy him. His experience was so linear. He went to the US Air Force and he became a pilot. And because when he retired from the Air Force, when you're a pilot, there's an obvious career path, so you become a pilot. And I thought,
right.
Oh, everything was spelled out for him. And then he threw up the slide for this second question. And it was a series of economic downturns that he graduated into from his experience. Like every time he had to make a decision, it was in an atmosphere that really didn't suggest stability and a good career path for him. There was a path, but it wasn't necessarily one that looked good. And yet he marched right through it with his principles and with the value that he felt he could provide, and he is where he is today, and that's wonderful. And I kind of thought about it, and I thought, well, that's kind of what I've done too. I left Principia College in 1990, and it wasn't a great job market. It wasn't horrible, but I was also returning to my parents' home in a small town in California where I was not going to work there. I was going to have to go somewhere else. And this was the era, I might remind some of our younger viewers, this was the era before the internet, before email, before free long distance. So finding a job was a very different experience. You were circling things in newspapers and, you know, calling in to jobs, to places that might have records of jobs and industries. And it was a very kind of slow and disconnected experience. And so I just moved to a city to San Francisco that I knew would have jobs in finance, and said I will find a way to be productive and useful. And I signed up with a temp agency, and they placed me with a brokerage, alphabetizing securities. I was literally alphabetizing as my first job out of college, and I did really well at it. So Print does really well with the alphabet, I can tell you that much. And I, you know, within a year, I had moved like 4 positions up and was supervising or something. And so that's just kind of a lesson in, if you do graduate into an atmosphere in which people aren't throwing jobs at you, again, redefine what it is you want to add value to, and add whatever value you can, and that will be the way to move forward. But so that was my first experience along Alan Zwick's same sort of bullet timeline. I graduated from law school and went to California, and the .com bubble burst. And so I moved back to New York, and then 9/11 happened. I mean, it was just kind of, it's amazing how life keeps you moving.
Right, right.
You have that sense of principle and that sense of wanting to make sure that if you're going to get up and go to work every morning, that it is a matter of contributing. It's a matter of, Father, where thine own children are, I love to be. Then you're gonna find a path. There might be a little bit of half step forward, 2 steps back, or vice versa, but you will find your path forward where you're contributing and feeling and being rewarded accordingly. It's really
So
good.
how important today then is it to talk to people, to have conversations? How important has that been in your career as it relates to making these changes from finance to the CIA and to consulting, and now in New Orleans? I mean, certainly along the way, you had to say, boy, I got to reach out and talk to some folks.
Well, this is the point at which I had to this one brought me up short. This one was one where I had to disagree with Robin's characterization of me as changing careers. Because when you ask if I recommend having conversations with multiple different professionals outside of my lane, I kind of am multiple different professionals outside of any lane. I would change careers per se. I mean, I did. I took the entry level of a number of different career paths that many friends have stayed on and done very, very well at. And I'm not saying that there isn't, for some people, it's wonderful that they fall in love with that career track for which there's a ladder and they climb it and maybe skip rungs and have wonderful experiences. But for me, it was, I wanted to gather expertise in a number of different paths apparently, and then ended up at the CIA where, because of what they wanted me to do, I was supposed to be able to interpret the activities of people in these professions around the world and what they were likely to be doing. I mean, it's what you hear in the news discussed as follow the money. It is finance and commercial structures are a major kind of component of the world, and a good number of the world's people are governed by their interaction with those structures. So one way for the National Security Agency and collective of the United States to understand what's going on in the world is to watch the financial and the commercial atmospheres, the biospheres, if you will.
Is that kind of how you got into the CIA? That kind of your finance kind of led you there and said, hey, well, we really need people that can help us. So kind of your skill set that you'd been developing was what they were looking for.
Yeah, they do actually try to recruit people who know about the topics that they are going to be analyzing and advising on. If it's a particular geography or a particular, if it's political Islam, do you have experience either living in or studying political Islam? If it's how do the financiers of the world work? How do they move money? How do they think about how to structure things? Then they're going to look for people that have kind of moved around in that environment. So when I got to the agency, I really was very pleased that I had not only been through a couple of different professional paths, but that I had kept connections there to be able to reach back to get updated expertise, to get a sounding board for what it was that I thought was probably the truth. But even trying to get to that point, being able to reach out to people. I mean, I got my job at the agency by contacting one of the alumni at Principia that had offered to be a contact in the national security environment. And being able to talk to him about what it is I wanted to do and why I thought I wanted to do it. Being able to have those offline conversations where you're not in an actual interview, you're just saying, here's what I think I am good at and what I think I am interested in, and here's how I think it parallels with an industry that you're in and a position that you're in. Can you tell me if I'm right or close or interested correctly? That was incredibly valuable. And now that I'm consulting, the further you move away from past experiences, the more your expertise can be portrayed as stale. And honestly, the speed things that move at these days, it's absolutely true that if you're not in it, you may not know exactly how it's working right now. So being able to reach back to those people when you get into a consulting role or a role where you're trying to consolidate a lot of different skills you've brought from the past, being able to reach back to those people and say, hey, it was nice working with you 20 years ago. Is it still the way it was? Does this make sense? Is priceless. And the last thing I would say is that it's a two-way street. I mean, everybody is working their own experience. I'm fascinated at what kids graduating from college are experiencing now in the careers that I have left behind. I mean, finance has got to be so different in the post-internet age. I mean, I've read it in the Wall Street Journal, but do I really understand it? No. So I would love to talk to young people who are working in industries that I came from, but that are 20 years behind me. That's great. So look at it as a two-way street. Got it.
I love it. Well, in thinking about what we've kind of covered, you put together some the top three takeaways. Maybe you can expand a little bit on those and share with us some of your closing comments about our session.
Yeah, especially since I haven't been terribly linear in my pursuit of your slides. The redefinition of value and money has been important to me. I definitely went through it with starting to consult and having to tell people what I thought I was worth, as opposed to just sort of saying, okay, you've offered me this position on the ladder and I know what that position is worth. But it has really kind of come home. Currently, we are in the sort of, I guess, the age bracket where people start talking about how much do you need to retire. And everybody's seen the articles in the newspaper and whatnot. There's calculators where you can say how many of those little ducats, those little dollars, do you need to have in a box before you are able to retire? And there's this sort of commoditization of your time that says, if you have this many dollars for an hour or for the rest of your life or whatever, then it's fine. But value is really just, I mean, even the economists humanly define money and currency as a measure of value. And value is a measure of benefit provided between people. So benefit provided is something I can tap into as a Christian Scientist. Value provided is good expressed. So start every single professional or other conversation that you're having in your head or with somebody about what the monetary exchange is going to be, with an idea of what kind of good is being expressed. And then
Right.
the value, the compensation should follow from there. And then the one thing that I am the embodiment of is not needing a roadmap. And a lot of college graduates these days are being told there's no roadmap because this has never happened before. The whole world's in upheaval. Nothing's normal. Even college isn't the same anymore, but nobody has a roadmap. I mean, you can pick, there are some roadmaps that you can pick, and there's nothing wrong with that if you know that you want to become a lawyer and you want to be a litigator and you want to go there for 25 years, and that's great. But it's not a roadmap, it's more of it travels like thought, not linearly. It travels in any direction that thought can travel. So really just, if you have your own principles, your sense of principle with a capital P, and then your expression of that, which is your own sense of principles, what is a value to you, then just pursue that and make your own roadmap.
Well, I love your point about being curious. I read another article today in the journal that said, the Wall Street Journal, and it said that in 10 or 20 years, 70 to 80% of the jobs that we have now are not going to be the same kind of jobs that are going to be in the future. So, as you look at your career, I'm sure, it looks like you've been pretty curious, Kristin. It looks like you've been trying to peek over the fence, you know what I'm saying? Over the side of the boat, looking at the net. How much do I got in there? How many fish are going to be in there, right?
Yeah, it's, curiosity is a nice way to live. It's just, it's never dull. I get up every morning and want to learn something new. And that's been at every job that I've had. And they've been progressively more rewarding in terms of filling that, that interest. The CIA was a very good one. One thing I loved about that job was that if you got bored with what you were doing, they said, well, what else would you like to do? Because once they've cleared you for a security clearance, you're an asset they want to keep. So they're like, if you're done looking at North Korea, what do you want to look at next? Afghanistan? Okay. But it's across the board. If you're curious, you're going to keep learning. And if you're going to keep learning, you're going to keep being of value to somebody. But it's also the best way to network, because if you're curious, you just want to hear what somebody else is doing.
Well, I think that goes to the point that we made earlier. Why do you want to talk to people that are outside your lane, right? Because you're curious. Yeah. And when you're curious and you say, hey, what do you do? And here's what I do, things happen, right? You get involved with someone that says, hey, I'm in this place and I have a whole bunch of people that might be something you might want to be.
So
right?
funniest example of this was my most recent one. I'll be quick, but we are sailors and we have a sailboat. And when you have a sailboat, you need a diver to go down and kind of clean off the bottom of the hull every once in a while. Like, I think we get it done monthly now, but because New Orleans, things grow. But the diver that was coming out and putting on this huge wetsuit and diving into the bayou to scrub the bottom of our boat came up at one point, and he was discussing the fact that he also does contract work for the US government doing interviews for security clearances, and that it's great sort of, fill your time kind of work. And I thought, well, I had a security clearance. This has to be something I could tap into. And we were talking for a little while, and he said, yeah, let me hook you up with my company. And I got it with his company, and now I'm doing security clearances for my old agency, which is really funny. But who really would have normally talked to their diver about that?
Well, and that's part of that
story. Everybody is so and so involved with things, and just ask them about it, because some aspect of what they're doing is almost certainly of interest to you, and they would love to talk about it.
Well, I love that. We need to kind of get into our Q&A and wrap up. I've got a bunch of questions to ask you, so we're going to try to go through this list as quickly as we can. I'm also going to launch the poll so that if people got to jump off, they can quickly react to our poll and get that done. But I think I'm going to start kick this off with Alex's question. Actually, I'm going to start with Anna's. Anna asks us, how did you know when it was time to make that change in your career?
It goes back to my adding value and being passionate argument. There was a point where I didn't feel like I was adding value, and I didn't feel like I was passionate. And that can be a selfish and sort of insular thing, or it can be you really look around your workplace. And the good news is, for instance, in the first change from finance to law, I had moved from a big financial services company to a small one, which was just one guy that wanted to start up his own company. And he brought on two of us, another gal that was going to run sort of the administrative side of things, and I was going to run the operations side of things. And I had done, so I had basically covered half of the firm that I had previously worked at in terms of, but on sort of a shoestring level. So I had learned operational reporting and trading and compliance and audit and sort of all sorts of things. And I kind of looked around and thought, okay, they're all running well, and I'm kind of not sure what to do next. And I went and talked to the guy who ran the company, and he said, well, let me give you something. God love him, he was a great guy. Said, let me try something else. Try sales, which is something I hadn't tried, and hated it. Oh my goodness, so not suited for sales. And so I came back to him and said, sales not really for me. And he said, well, then maybe it's time for you to look for something else. And I said, absolutely. And at that point I had begun thinking that way anyway. So without knowing what was next, I went and took all of the graduate school exams, because that was my first career out of college. And I thought, well, graduate school may be next. So I took all of the entrance exams and had done some research and thought, law looks really interesting. And he and all of my coworkers were so excited and so pleased and supportive of where I was going, and almost counted it as almost a firm success that they were sending somebody off to do this. You'll kind of move into it gradually, but if at every phase you're feeling like you're trying to produce the most value and benefit to everybody, then you know you're on the right path. Yourself, your firm, everybody, it shouldn't be inharmonious. But there's just this sense that you need to produce more value elsewhere.
Have you ever felt like maybe it was self-serving to kind of talk about a career change, or maybe, talk about yourself as it related to maybe seeing a job opportunity or an individual that maybe you like to work with or work for? How did you overcome, feeling like, yeah, I'm talking a little bit too much about myself, or it's self-serving?
Oh, gee, is this coming from somebody else?
Well, it's kind of it's a good question.
Yeah, no, I get it. But no, surprisingly, and I don't think it's a lack of introspection. So I told you about the transition from finance, the transition to law. I mean, I was at a downtown Manhattan law firm when the World Trade Center came down, and everybody in New York wanted to do something. I mean, our law firm hosted the military in our offices because the Posse Comitatus Act said that the military couldn't deploy on US soil, and this is the first time it had in forever. So they had to figure out the law of being allowed to have the military take control of certain elements of Lower Manhattan. And everybody was really into that. And so when I went to the two primary partners that I worked for and said, I need to do something about this, and I'm going to drop this application. I was holding an envelope, and I'm going to drop this application in the mail to the CIA. And they said, cannot think of anything that would be a better thing to do. And even one of the partners that was kind of surly, and I consider him very self-interested. I was making him a lot of money working for him. But he said, there's no bigger growth industry than the government at this point. And if I had a child, I'd send him into that too. So I thought that was the best blessing I could get from a curmudgeon. But I mean, every experience, and even the CIA, they came back to me to do security clearance investigations. I mean, I don't feel like, and it's funny because I was recently involved in an experience where I was part of a panel hiring somebody, and we were asked to submit questions that we might ask the panelist or the applicant. And my question was, what are you trying to leave behind? Or what are you looking forward to leaving behind in your old job? And what are you looking for in this new job? Which, you know, to me, I couldn't think of anything I was leaving behind in my old jobs, but I could think of things I was looking for. It's always progressive. You're always, and if you're not looking to leave anything behind, then you're not leaving it harmoniously. You're not trying to take something away that you've been trying to get rid of for a long time. It's just that your time there is done.
Well, if you were looking back, so Alex asked this question. He says, if you were looking back at your college self, right? What advice would you give yourself?
It really is my second answer, which is just don't try to climb a ladder. Don't worry about ladders. If you find a ladder you love, great. But I did come out of college thinking I needed to find, I mean, I was put through college on my family's shoestrings. And so it was very important that I take a career path that I could support myself. And I was very serious about that. And I stressed about it for a little while, that it really needed to be lucrative. It needed to be something where I could see the end. And that was in my mid-20s, late 20s. And that was also sort of when I started to really grasp Christian Science practice for myself. I went through class instruction and I really took everything I'd been raised in and said, okay, and I'm not gonna lie, it kind of coincided, the grand crescendo coincided with 9/11. I mean, I had to really define for myself my sense of God and my relationship to him and how that would direct my life. And so not taking the world's definition of where you should go, of the steps you must complete. I'm reading all these articles these days about, you know, if you didn't do an internship, well, then you can't possibly expect it. No, there's none of that. If you are who you are and you're defining what you're interested in and you're passionate about it, then you will speak to somebody about being passionate about it. And when you find the right spot, that passion will connect and you will be in your right place. So just trying to tell myself that you don't have to accept roadmaps.
Well, you know, that's kind of an interesting, because there's a couple questions about roadmaps. Adam, you kind of covered Adam's question, and thanks for that question, Adam. And then there's another question I thought was interesting. We have, you know, with what's happening, there are a lot of people looking at career options that they may not have been at one point. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm going this way, but that way's now it's shut down, you know? So Amanda asked this question, I thought it was great. How do you get noticed in an industry where you didn't graduate with a dominant degree in that field? You know, you have to move into a place, you have some opportunities presented, and you think, okay, well, this looks like a great thing, so I'm going to go after that.
Yeah, no, I'd go back to my first experience out of college. I mean, I didn't really, and I think it was a combination of a down economy. I don't really know, but it seemed like in retrospect, a combination of a down economy and the fact that I was living in the middle of nowhere and we didn't have the internet, but it's easy in hindsight to say that was my problem. But I didn't really see how to find, I had sort of sent the resumes and cover letters that everybody said was what you do.
Right.
Wasn't getting positive responses. And so I said, okay, well, I will go there and be there. And I had enough cash saved up from a summer job to go find a shared room in a house in the city I was going to move to. I had to move to a city, and so I chose one of the two that was in remote distance from my parents' house. And then I signed up with a temp agency, and I said I'd like to work in the financial services industry in any capacity. That is one option. I'm not saying everybody here has to think if they want to be the president of McDonald's that they have to go flip burgers, but that is one option. The other is to always look across jobs and see what the skill sets are that are transferable.
So what do you think some of those prize skills, what would you, if you could capitalize on 3 or 4, what would you say those might be?
An analysis, writing, interacting with people, whether it's customers or teammates. That's 3.
Yeah, that's good. Those are good. And what about, what do you see in your line of work? Do you see job opportunities in the future? Do you feel like that's
Yeah, that's kind of funny because everybody's talking about how AI is going to replace analysts, and that's what I am as an analyst. I've been an analyst my whole life in various capacities, and I don't see it. I mean, I'm using some of the highest tech AI-enabled software to do what I do, but it's because I understand the world in which people operate that I am able to do what I do. And I just spent all day today looking at traffickers in Laos and Thailand and Cambodia and Vietnam on their Facebook pages. And unless I knew they were traffickers, I wouldn't be able to see that that's what they were doing. It's just, you just have to have kind of waited around in the world to recognize that. So no, I don't think people need to worry about that at all. People will always be needed.
And do you think if someone is like trying to re-enter the job market, you know, like, so they haven't been in the job market for a while and now they're trying to, what would you say to them today?
Gosh, I hate to keep harping on the same thing, but what is it that is your passion that you are so applied to, that you're so interested in, that you are really good at it? And if you're looking in that area, I don't see how anybody couldn't want to bring you in to be, you know, to be a passionate advocate for that kind of thing. I mean, you have to have some skills. You have to be willing to offer something. I mean, I alphabetized at the beginning. I was, believe it or not, I came out of Prin doing more than just alphabetizing, but that was what I offered at that moment for that employer. They said, we need somebody that can alphabetize. And I'm hopeful that somebody at the temp agency said, but this is a particularly well-educated and well-spoken and sort of poised alphabetizer. But that was what I offered at the moment. And so you may have to offer a skill with passion behind it for a little while. But hopefully those two things combined are what the person is really excited to bring on and then moves forward very quickly.
I think it's terrific. And some of you have asked, how can we reach and request a conversation or connection, informational interview with our sweet guest? And you can go to the abfcareeralliance.org and you click any one of the tabs, a job seeker, student, career ally, and you'll find our Twitter feed on the right-hand side. And I posted Kristin's career connection, and all you have to do is click on that little link right there. It'll put you right there, and all you have to do is just check the boxes and go through the process of requesting the connection. So it's really pretty straightforward and easy to do. We would love for you all to connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And we want to thank, wasn't this an awesome day? Wasn't this time well spent? Kristin, you were fabulous. It was great to have you on the Net Effect today.
Which is what my resume promises.
Right. So if any of you want to get more skills and want more information about how to approach targeting a job or looking for interviewing skills, go to our tips and tools page, or tools and tips page, to the Life Launch online career course. There's 9 modules there. And although the language may seem like it's just for college graduates, those things that are in there, those ideas are terrific. They're time tested and they're applicable for all of us. You know, the most challenging, unfortunately, today are our recent graduates trying to find a job. So if they can find a job, then those of you that are making some of those career changes and looking for help, you can find them too. And students, if your career offices are closed or you're having a hard time getting to them, we have great resources in our Student Connections and College to Career Roadmap page. And you can always reach out to me, Robin at albertbakerfund.org. Before I close, I want to thank the Albert Baker Fund's incredible staff. No one can do these kinds of things on their own. We have great support in our office. Our board is fabulous and promoting these great concepts that we're presenting you today. The Career Alliance has created an online connections and jobs board where you can reach out and request one-to-one career connections, like with our special guest, Kristin, and others that are coming up in the future. Next week, we're going to have George Nutwell, former State Department employee, over 30 years now, COP for the state of Texas. Can't wait to talk to George. So if you're not registered for the Career Alliance, get registered. Go to the abfcareeralliance.org. It's really simple. And again, if you have any questions, reach out to me. If you're a student, reach out to me. And if you haven't become a career ally, what are you waiting for? We'd love to have you. We have students and career changers in our community that are aching to make connections.
I may need to talk to you.
That's right. You know, I could be that guy under the boat, just so you know. So just like the Master, Christ Jesus, when you do what you're doing, be sure you do it with the right motive and cast that net on the right side. This is Robin Jones signing off.
Thanks, Robin.
Thank you, Kristin.